already done that, so I have to like walk away with it.
Okay, just a moment, we'll have the close. We are about, I'm going to speak in English just because we have English speaking guest. So welcome everyone. This is the inaugural session for the Plunc Festival, and Carlos will talk a bit more about the festival. It's also sponsored by Novel Links, our research center, this talk. And it's our great pleasure to have today the executive Lieberman. We'll be talking about these installations and these projects. I've seen several of these projects in different places across the electronic and other places. So I'm excited to have this presentation here today. I hope you enjoy it and that you can also participate in the other activities of the Plunc Festival. We are going to have different talks and different installations in different parts of Lisbon and Almada, and Carlos will talk a bit more about this. I won't take much more time, so I'll just give the floor to Carlos to talk a bit about the festival. Carlos is a digital media PhD student, and he has been organizing this festival along with other colleagues.
Hello, welcome everyone. Firstly, I want just to thank Director Vincent Tanner and Professor Lieberman and our links also for Zach, and to have accepted our idea of making this festival and supporting the festival. Thank you very much. And also to thank Zach Lieberman for accepting our invitation to come to the festival. We are very honored to have you here. Plunc Festival is a new digital media, digital arts and new media festival, and started today. So it has exhibitions, workshops. You all have a program, some talks, some conferences, and some performances, other visual performances. So the exhibitions open today at 10 a.m. every day until Sunday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. You can check the exhibitions. They are very interactive pieces and installations. And then you can follow the talks about the students about new media and digital arts. We have a lot of artists here in the festival. They will talk about their work. And if you want to meet them in other space, we have Gijal Terrace in Casillas every day from 7 p.m. till midnight, something. They will be there to have a drink and share a drink with you. So all the program is in the site www.plunc.pt, so check it out. And yeah, let's see more steps. Co-director for instance, thank you for trying this.
Also, Mr. Tanner is both the director of the school and also the director of the US and Portugal project that also sponsorships this festival. So, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Just very brief words to welcome to this festival and also to our school. We are very glad, very pleased that you are here with us. And allow me to greet in very special way our guest today, very special guest. Thanks for coming. It is an honor to have you with us. My congratulations to Professor Nuno Coelho for his initiative, as well as Carlos. We have talked about Plunc, I don't know, maybe 1 year or something ago. It was a nice idea, and the proof that it was a nice idea is here with a lot of people, colleagues, attending this session. This festival, the Plunc, I would say in a very brief way that it joins arts with science, digital media, and so on. So it is a quite interesting idea, even for our school. And I can say that we have a discussion with the municipality of Almada. Maybe in the future we will have a sort of an association at all the spots that deal with science and with arts, and it would be called Almada Arts and Science, because we have a science park here in the school as well. Almada has also 2 agencies for the promotion of either the land, the territory, or the arts, Quarteirão das Artes. And that it would make sense to have sort of an association to promote arts and science. This is a school of science and technology, as you all know, but we have this target, if I can say, or this policy with us that not only science, but also culture and arts. And here in the library, and as you can see, if you look to the left, we have an installation of a young artist, and we provide this space to have these installations, manifestation of people, different types of art. This is the last one, which is very nice. And maybe the people from science, like Nuno, can theorize the form and define whatever the derivatives or also to describe the surface. Anyway, on the other hand, this festival is integrated in the, as Nuno mentioned, in the Youth Austin Portugal program that is sponsoring also the event. I would say that one of the main areas, the two main areas of the program is in the digital media, and this fits entirely there. So congratulations, Nuno and all the people for the initiative again. Thank you all for being with us. Enjoy the festival, enjoy the school, have a go and see the place for those of you that are here with us for the first time. For our very special guest, thank you so much for being with us. And well, congratulations, welcome. Thank you.
Without much delay, I just invite back I forgot to say when I was in university before that Zach is also one of the authors of openFrameworks, and a lot of my students have been using openFrameworks over the years. So they can combine me, compliment Zach here. Actually, we have been using this for classes with some of the students. Thanks for all for that and for all the other.
So, first, I have a lot of thank yous. Thank you to Carlos and Monica and the folks who are organizing this festival and everybody else for having me out here. It's really an honor. So, I'm trying to learn some Portuguese, so I'm going to try. Boa tarde. Did I say that? Boa tarde. Boa tarde. And obrigado. Those are my two words that I know. So, obrigado for coming. Boa tarde. So actually, let's stand up, just to start. Like I'm going to show some stuff, but let's everybody stand for a second. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you the instructions. I want you to take your right hand, and I want you to put it on the shoulder of somebody that you don't know. Right, and then I want you to take your left hand and put it on the shoulder of somebody else that you don't know. All right, so your homework is, because we're in a university, your homework assignment after this talk, I want you to make some new friends. So that's your homework assignment. And that's actually like one of the joy, you can, it's a, make some new friends. That's the joy of a festival, right? That's the joy of a festival. That's what the festival should be about, is making new friends, coming together. And so I'm really excited to be here and make some new friends as well. So I'm going to talk to you about my work, and then depending on how things go, I'll talk to you about my teaching and other projects. So to begin with, just to explain who I am, I used to look like this. I studied fine arts. So does anybody in here study fine arts? Is there any fine? Yeah, I see a few hands. Okay. So I studied painting and printmaking and etching and lithography. That's what my background is in the arts. And it was actually accidental that I wound up using computers and technology, but I really come from the arts, and I used to look like this, and now I use computers and I travel a lot, and one of the things that happens when you travel is you come to a new place, and they ask you what you do for a living. and I never feel very comfortable to say that I'm an artist. And really what I want to say is that I'm a researcher. Because I really like this idea of artist as researcher. So a company has an R&D, in America we call it an R&D department, research and development, right? A car company would have an R&D department to think about cars of the future. That artists are a kind of R&D department for humanity. That artists are thinking about different possible futures. And I like this idea. So I want to say that I'm a researcher. I write software. So who in here works with code, with software? Okay, more code than art. Okay, interesting. So I write code to create the artwork, but I like to think about code and technology the same way you think about breathing. You're not conscious of the fact that you're breathing. And in the work that I do, I don't want it to be consciously about technology. I don't want somebody to point at the artwork and say, that's a great piece of software, but rather that's a great idea or that's a great poem. I'm really interested in drawing, so my background is in art. I love drawing, and one of the things that I find super frustrating with the computer is the drawing tools. You know, if you use something like Photoshop or Illustrator, they don't feel like what it feels like to use paper, right? It's magical to draw on paper, but when you use a computer, it feels like this approximation, this thin approximation of what drawings are. And so as I started to work with code, I was really thinking about drawing systems. How can I build new tools for drawing? So a lot of these early experiments, this is an early experiment which basically asks a very simple question. What happens if you draw a line and if the line uncurls itself? And so as you draw, the line animates, you make a drawing, and based on the curvature of the line starts to move. Right? And this is a very simple what-if question. What if a line uncurled itself? And you could do this with wire, you could do this with traditional animation techniques, but this was one of those things where I really wanted to write software in order to see the results. And a lot of what I do for a living is kind of ask this question and then write some software to see the results. So very interested in drawing. I'm going to show you an early project about drawing. This is called Drawn. And the basic idea is that for this project, I'm on stage painting, and the audience can see what I'm painting behind me. So it's a live performance with ink. And it's inspired by the work of Thomas Edison and John Stuart Blackton. This is a film from 1905 called The Enchanted Drawing. And here you can see a drawing come off of a piece of paper, right? They create the illusion of a drawing coming to life. Or the Portuguese artist Helena Almeida. Who knows Helena Almeida? Am I saying her name right? Yeah. Okay. She's like, close. She's like one of my favorite artists. So actually, while I'm here, I want to try to find some of her books and bring some of it back. I love her work, but here she paints a blue dot. She's augmenting photographs, so she paints a blue dot, she picks it up, she eats it, and she cries blue tears. And I love this idea of paint as something you could touch. So I created this performance where I'm on stage painting, and then I can touch the painting.
続いてご紹介するのはザッカリーさんの作品「ドローン」。ザッカリーさん、白い紙に何やら書いていますが、あらら、動き始めましたよ。
I don't know what she's saying.
But it's Japanese.
It's Japanese, yeah.
作品「ドローン」は紙に書いた模様がまるで命を吹き込まれたかのように突然動き出す、まさに手品のような作品です。
And there was something that I noticed when we were touring in Japan, and after every performance, so I'm really used to like Western audiences. In Italy, like everybody's like really loud and like clapping and noisy, and in Japan, we got there and the audience is really silent. So I thought, I'm doing a terrible job. Right? I'm on stage and I'm like, nobody's clapping, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? But then afterwards, everybody would come up and they just want to see it and they want to understand it. And it was like this other way of interacting. So I wanted to make a version for people to try themselves. And a lot of what I do is goes back and forth between performance, or some tool that I'm building for myself, and an installation, something that I will build for somebody else. And performance is great because you can take somebody on a journey. Like, you really have a sense of structure and time. But in installation, you're inviting anybody to come and perform. So for this installation, I set it up and invite people to make drawings. And there's something that I noticed when I watch people use this project, which I got very obsessed with, and I call this the open mouth phenomenon. So my friend Evan Roth, he calls this the holy fuck moment. But I call it the open mouth moment. So I want you to pay attention. This is in a festival for children in Amsterdam called Syndicate. So this is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. So when I say open mouth, this is what I'm interested in, this moment of an open mouth. And if I have to say what my artist strategy is, right? People always ask you, if you say you're an artist, then you have to write an artist statement. You have to tell people what you're interested in. And like, all I want to do for my artist statement is just show this photograph, right? This open mouth. For me, I will make the argument that an open mouth is a pathway to someone's heart. So I'm interested in all kinds of weird drawing tools, and I collaborated with my friend Amit Pataru to help him with this project called Rhonda. Rhonda is a drawing tool which, how many people in here have used 3D software? So typical 3D software is like lots of crazy interface and all kinds of buttons. We wanted to make something with 3D but that had no interface. So this is a drawing software where you make drawings and then you can rotate the drawing. And it's very much like what it feels like to draw in a sketchbook, but with an added dimension. So there's no buttons, there's no knobs. This is just using a trackball to do rotation. And then we're using little cues like red dots that show you where the drawing is intersecting with the drawing plane. So you can make drawings and then you can rotate it and translate it and scale it. And we made this tool and we put it out there, and it's really beautiful. Like, when you make tools and you put them out there, it's really nice to see what people do with them. So people make crazy stuff. I love, like, people just like jamming and sketching. Oh, let's see, did that video not play? Okay. Can you see this? All right, I got an email from this guy from Mexico, and he said, you know, I'm an old man, and I can draw with your software. So he drew, it's a little dim, but you can see there's a soccer player here. So he draws a soccer player, and then a referee, and then scorekeeper, and a goalie, coach, knockout player, airplane, astronaut, banana. And it's like really beautiful. Like, you put stuff out there and then you see like what people do with it, and it's really magical to make these tools. So I'm interested in new ways of drawing. Sometimes we do commercial work. So we're artists, we have to make a living. I have family, I need to put food on the table. So we also work with companies, and we do like stuff in museums and then stuff for companies. And this was a project for a company. So Toyota has this small car called the Toyota IQ, and it's a smart car. And people think that if you drive this car quickly, it's going to fall over, right? Like, it's like this tiny car, it looks like a toy. And so we wanted to create a video showing people driving this car really quickly. And so we designed this project where we took this car And we took letters of the alphabet and we hired a driver to drive letters of the alphabet. And we put colored dots on top of the car. So a lot of, when we design these projects, we do a lot of experiments. Like what I do day to day looks like this. Like I'll hang out in the studio and like move around this colored, this like little model of what the camera might look like and say, okay, can we track these colored dots? And then this is one of my favorite videos. This is my friend Ramin. And he's just running around in front of the studio holding a colored dot. And you can imagine what the neighbors thought. And then we put the dots on the car and we put a camera on the, with the crane, put a camera up and we track this car from above. And here you can see the software, it's just color tracking. So it's nothing fancy, it's just looking for pixels that have a certain color. And then tracking them over time, so understanding where those colored dots are moving, and then building a data set based on the driving. And the driver got really crazy. He was so excited. So he was doing all of these like wipeouts and like crazy moves and really making the car like jam. We had to do a lot of planning. And then in the end, so actually there's really nice ones. Like here, he drives backwards. He drove this G backwards. It was pretty cool. But in the end, we made a font. So we took the data from the driving and we made a typeface that you could download. And then this was like a video and a font. And somebody on the comments on the Vimeo that said that this is the most ecologically unfriendly font. But actually it's a promotion for a car that's very eco-friendly, so now I really want to make ecologically unfriendly fonts. Don't know how. This is a project with Nike. Nike has these running shoes and you can go running and they have this system called Nike Plus. Are people familiar with it? So you go running and it tracks your run and then you get like GPS data that shows you where your run is. And we were really interested in kind of imagining like a new way of working with that data. So we thought of this idea like, what would it look like if you had this giant paintbrush strapped onto your back? So you can see like, these are the kinds of visuals that we're sending our clients. And we're just saying like, oh, what if you had a paintbrush on your back? And they like it and say, okay, let's try it. And so we started to design software for making paintings. So what would it look like to make a kind of painting based on GPS data, based on running data? And we're really inspired thinking about Sumi ink brush and different types of brush strokes and brush patterns. But then also it's a data visualization question. Like what are the important moments of a run, right? There are moments where you change angle, or you change elevation, or you stop. And what could we track those, and could we use that data to alter the visuals? So a lot of what I do when I'm working is, from the one side, I approach it artistically, like what's the visuals, what's it going to look like? Like what's it going to feel like or sound like? But then on the other hand, there's this almost like engineering side where I'm thinking, what's the data source? What are the key moments? What are the key metrics? And so a lot of times my screen will look like this, like super schizophrenic, like kind of artwork and then engineering meets in the middle. I like this world. So we make this tool for taking running data and making paintings out of it. And we went out to Nike headquarters and we had a workshop. And actually one of the amazing things when we went out there to do this workshop is that we went out and we were doing the workshop on a Tuesday, and we were working on the software on Monday. And we're at Nike, and they come to us and they say, we want you to run and test your software. And we're like nerds, like we're hanging out coding, not ready to go running. We say, we can't go running, we have jeans on. And they look at us and they said, we're Nike. And they came back with black shorts, black t-shirt, black hoodie, black socks, black shoes, and we looked like ninjas. And we went running, and we tried to run for like a short run, like 3 miles, and we got super lost, and then we went on this like epic run, like 6 miles, like really long run. And then we came back and we plugged our data in, and it was beautiful. This artwork was beautiful, because you could actually see like, that's where we stopped to call Emily to tell her we're going to be late. That's when we realized that we had the map upside down. Like all of these moments were in the painting, and this painting had this real significance. So we had this workshop, and people made paintings, like went running and made paintings, and then we printed them out. So we made posters. We also took the data and we like laser etched it on boxes. And I like this idea of trying to think of data, but like how can we paint with it, or how can we use data in a different way? So some happy participants. Also really interested in movement, and how can we take movement and gesture and amplify it? So this is a project that I created with my longtime collaborator, Golan Levin, called the Manual Input Sessions. And you can actually see this. This is at the university. That I've set up some projects at the Fine Art School. I'm just pointing. I don't know where I'm pointing, but over the water. So I've set up this project called Manual Input Sessions, and this is basically combining like different types of projectors. So you have this old school projector, like in America we call this an overhead projector. Do you have the same name for it here? OHP. So it's combining an overhead projector and a digital projector and creating this kind of hybrid mixture. So it's both analog and digital. If you have like an overhead projector, it's like really not, you have a bright light source. It's kind of like, it's like a natural desire to make a shadow. So then how can you take that and amplify it or extend it? And we do projects like that, like taking the body and extending them. This is a project called Night Lights, which was created in New Zealand. And folks in New Zealand invited us to project on this large building. So this is a really big building in Auckland. And most building projection projects tend to be very kind of like 3D effects, like you see the building fall apart. Do people know what I'm talking about? Like building projection, like to me it feels like 3D demo, right? You see the building like break apart and come back together, and like shadows and lights, and but we're really interested in bodies, like people, and getting people to interact with the building. So we designed a system where there are stages that are you can stand on, and then we're using the silhouette of your body on the building. Or there's a light table where we're using the shadows from your hands and to interact with the building. And we like this idea of situations that invite people to do dance or move or hold hands or use their body in an interesting or compelling way. And create this kind of magical experience of interacting at a very large scale. So we use a lot of technology like camera. We had a bunch of cameras, a bunch of graphics cards, and create the system that basically translates, turns your body into monsters, or allows you to interact with the buildings in different ways. And for me, I think that's really kind of magical. This is a lot of sort of setup, work, figuring it out. But then the exciting part is actually inviting people. like see yourself like helping, collecting butterflies or growing plants, or like as a giant monster. And then I think like always with these projects, the kids really love it. It like works with families, it works with kids. But then for me, the big test is like the grammar test. So here I'm gonna pause it. Oh God! Yeah. What happened? When I pause on the grammar. Here. For me, it's like the grammar test is like the most important test because kids will always intuitively understand this stuff, but for this is really magical. If you can make something that works for like an 8-year-old, but also an 80-year-old, then I think you're winning at this stuff. I've been working a lot with dancers and movement, trying to understand, like take dance and choreography. This was with a Japanese band called Perfume. My friend Daito Manabe in Japan works with this kind of crazy pop band. We were creating visuals for one of their concerts. For some reason, we got all of this footage of them like dancing and holding guns. They look really strange. But trying to think about like dance movement and how you can capture movement and amplify it and create. I think there's like some really interesting areas to explore about the human body and how you can extend the human body. We've been doing different things with the human body. Recently, thinking about the face. And specifically, like, what would it look like to project on your face? So this is, again, with my friend Daito, just trying to figure out how to track the movement of the face in real time. A lot of, like, very simple experiments, like just using movement and trying to trigger visuals. Like, sometimes it looks very, like, kind of sci-fi, or Star Wars. And then, this is one of my favorites. This is Daito and I were hanging out in Belgrade, and this must have been like 3 a.m. in a hotel lobby, and we're testing. So we have the projector, we're out in the lobby working, and can you imagine if you walk into this hotel and you saw this? Like, oh, sorry. Just imagine like hotel lobby, you're walking in, like you're staying in this hotel, you've been out drinking, and you like come into the hotel, and you saw that, and you're like, that's cool. So, and I worked with a singer in New York, and I just like this idea, like there's so many, like I think there's just like real magical of like things where you can take very simple things like projection and what happens when we project on ourselves, or like create new forms of face painting, or kind of augmentation of the body. And it's very simple experiments, but I think there's a lot of stuff to explore there. I want to quickly talk, since we're in a school, I want to quickly share like a little mini lesson, and I'll talk about a project that's like really dear to me, and then maybe just quickly mention the school that I helped start in New York. But this is a little like mini lesson in when you think about technology and software. So how many of you are working in the field of like art and technology? This is like a lot of people in here. Okay. So like one of the things that I think is a trap. Now I teach, so now I'm like moving into my teacher voice. So this is actually like 7 or 8 years ago at the Venice Biennial, and I just want to I want to compare two artworks. So this is a crazy artwork by a Japanese artist named Mariko Mori, and this is this like insane UFO that she made, and she hired an Italian ship maker to make this crazy project. And the idea behind this project is that you would wait in line, and then you put on these brainwave meters, like things that will read your brain energy, and then you go into this UFO, like one at a time, and you have this kind of journey, right? You're seeing this animation based on your brain waves. So I waited for an hour and a half, and then I put on this brainwave meter, and I got in there, and it was like, for me, it was super boring. Like I had no idea what the relationship between what my brain was doing and what I was seeing. This is a crazy artwork. And if you look at the credits for this artwork, it's like $1 million artwork. It's like a movie if you look at the credits. And then you come out of that room, And there's an artwork by a Brazilian artist named Lieberman. And this project is called Lovers. And in this project, there's just 2 boats. So she put 2 boats in the water in Venice with lights at the front of the boats. And the lights are blinking, and they're going on and off. So it's just 2 boats that are facing each other with lights that are going back and forth. Like one blinks, and then the other one blinks. And sometimes they're blinking in sync, and sometimes they're blinking out of sync. And I sat there for a long time just watching this. And for me, it was a reminder of, when we think about media art, we think about these big, crazy projects like brainwaves and UFO. But actually, like this really small stuff, right? These poems, like we can just use blinking lights, and it will tell us something about what it means to be human. It will tell us about what it means to communicate, what it means to be in sync and out of sync. So I'll talk about a project that's really dear to me, and then I'll quickly mention the school. So this is a project called iWriter. It's a collaboration between Theo Watson and Chris Segru. So the 3 of us work on openFrameworks. Somebody mentioned, I think you mentioned openFrameworks. See if I have anywhere. So I just quickly mentioned, like openFrameworks is this kind of toolkit for artists. And it's basically like a set of software for creating interactive work. So there's a lot of like fun projects that people make with it. And it's also like just a really nice, I think, warm community of people that are experimenting with code and sharing the results of what they do. So again, I said before, like I like to think of myself as a researcher. Well, one way of doing research is publishing, and we use open source to publish the results of our research. So a lot of the people in this community write code and then share the code and kind of create a really nice feedback loop. So we work on openFrameworks together. And then the 3 of us collaborated with Evan Roth and James Potterly, who helped start the Graffiti Research Lab, which is a group looking at the intersection of graffiti and technology. And the 5 of us collaborated with Tent. Tent is an old school graffiti artist from LA. So he's really well known in Los Angeles and Southern California for his artwork. And about 10 years ago, he fell over and he was diagnosed with a disease called ALS. I don't know what you call this in Portugal. In America, we call it Lou Gehrig disease, because there was a famous baseball player named Lou Gehrig who got sick with this disease. But it's a disease that attacks your muscles. Do you know what it's called? Does anybody know what it's called in Portuguese? Oh, I didn't hear that. Sorry? So he was diagnosed with this, he fell over, he was diagnosed with this disease, and now he's completely paralyzed. So he's on a machine that helps him breathe. He can move his eyes, but he can't move the rest of his body. So we were invited by some friends of his to come out there and show him what we do, show him this sort of media artwork, and just kind of see if there was a way to collaborate. And we got to know him, we got to know his family and his friends and his caregivers. And then when we went out there, he had this commercial eye tracking system. So this is before he had the system, and even he also uses this like very old school technique. So there's an interpreter that would have a piece of paper with the letters of the alphabet, and they would use their finger. When they got to the right letter, he could signal with his eyes, and so very slowly spell out words. And here he has a commercial system. But these commercial systems, he says, dude, my hardware is ghetto, because the only thing he can do with it is type messages. But he could also very well be saying, dude, my hardware is expensive, because these things are $10,000 or $15,000, right? These eye tracking systems. So we went out there just to kind of understand his world and see if there's a way to collaborate.
Tony, you know, Tim Plunc is there because he's Lou Gehrig disease, Lou Gehrig disease. Unlike referred to as ALS, he is not able to move. talk or moving part of the body. And so, but however, his brain is wide awake and it's just full of ideas and creativity. And so it's fortunate that you guys have introduced him to my time.
So what we tried to do is just learn as much as we could about eye tracking, like building like tools just to study eye movement and see what we could follow, like how could we track the pupil of the eye. We also hacked his system, so we found a way to work with his computer system and build drawings software for that. And then we came up with a kit. Basically, it's a open hardware and open software kit for making eye tracking systems. So basically using like stuff you can buy off the shelf, like webcams and sunglasses, and build this tool called the iWriter. It's basically like a $50 eye tracking system. So here you can see we're working on the hardware. We have our Kanye eye tracker, didn't work very well, and also working on the software. But one of the most important things is that we spent a lot of time just thinking about tent. So usually when you think about software, you think about something that's built for a lot of people. Like a Photoshop is built for lots of different people. But we were building software for tent, really for one person. So we spent a lot of time thinking about his style, his approach to letter forms, and building a tool for him specifically. So here he is using the system, and in order to draw, it's a bit like if you've ever used the pen tool in Illustrator, you can create, dots. In this case, if he looks long enough at a spot on the screen, it's like clicking the pen tool. And from the dots, you can make lines. From the lines, you can make letters, and then from the letters, words. And then once he had this system, he could start to style them and do things with them. So this is really sped up, but you can get a sense of how it's working. And once we had this system where he could draw, we were thinking, what is the next step? And the next step was to actually go outside and project his drawings live. So he's in the hospital room, and then we go out on the street and with a projector, take the drawings that he was making and project them on the side of a building. So we developed a technology which we call GML, Graffiti Markup Language. And it's basically a protocol for communicating graffiti across the internet. So that he could be in the hospital room, make a drawing, and then across the web, we could send the drawing that he made to a computer that would project it. Then we would stream it back into the hospital room, so he could make a drawing, and then we project it out on the street, and then he would see it in the hospital room. So here's an early version of the software. You can see it's just like he's just drawing letters down there.
Right there in this room, right there out there public. Just last night, we were out in downtown Los Angeles. Dark corners of downtown Los Angeles. And I stood there in some dark corner, fearing for my life. No, out there in the tall buildings, unbelievable. Someone was tagging Tim's name up there. That was actually Tony drawing in this hospital room. And miles away, it was being projected onto the wall of the building.
And it was really like, we don't have permission from anybody. We just drive around until we find a building that looks good. And then if the cops come, we leave. But the nice thing is actually when we did this thing, it became a kind of party. Like his friends came out, his family, and they're all in the chat room. We're live streamed. They're in the chat room sending him messages, and it just was really I think an exciting. It's like for me this whole world. There's a whole world of assistive technology, right? Like how can we use technology to assist people or help people overcome physical limitations or mental limitations. And there's an aspect of assistive technology that I think is about superpowers. What does it mean to be a superhero? a lot of superheroes go through, like if you read a comic book, they have this moment where they like have a terrible accident. You know, like they're in a lab and they like spill chemicals all over themselves, but then they come out with these like new powers. And I think there's this whole world of what it means, like what is a modern day superhero? I think there's a whole world. He said, you know, I've been drawing things since 2003. It feels like taking a breath after being held underwater for 5 minutes. And here he's drawing with a system, and he's making drawings that I can't even imagine making with my hand, that he's making with his eye movement. We're able to take his drawings wherever we go. You know, take the data and, you know, use it and send it and do crazy things with it. This is our dream. We meet a rich person. This is what we want to do. But here, oh no. Okay. Oh yeah, wait. What? Sorry. All right, here you can see this is actually like a. Working with students and kind of developing the iWriter and like hack it and take it apart and build new versions of the iWriter system and work with local school children who are paralyzed and test the system and kind of develop the equipment. We came up with a new version of the iWriter. This is kind of like also free and open source and low cost. Went out to LA, worked with Tempt, and he's already like using it.
Graffiti Research Labs iWriter 2.0, all of it in the next yonder.
Like making jokes. So this is my favorite picture of all the pictures from all the projects. This is a kid who was hanging out with us. So this couple invited us to LA. They knew Tempt from a fundraiser. And their son hung out with us the whole time when we were working on this project. And he made his own version of the iWriter out of toys. So he's walking around with this toy version of the artwork that we're making. He made it out of toys, and I love the power. I think this suggests the power of art, which is, you know, on the one hand, like really obviously to inspire the next generation, but also the power of art is to suggest that there are things that individuals and collectives can do that governments are not going to do, and companies are not going to do, but people working together can do. I want to quickly switch gears and just mention, okay, wow, so many things to talk about. I want to quickly mention the school that I help run in New York, which is called the School for Poetic Computation, and it is, we don't really have a logo yet, we're still trying to figure it out, but we're really interested in poetry. Right? Like, what does it mean to be a poet and working with code? And what is this combination of code and poetry? And if you think about poetry, when you go into the bookstore, you have to go to the back of the bookstore. And there's like this little shelf in the back, and that's where the poetry books are. But I love this idea of poetry. Like, it's this world where nobody's getting rich writing poems, but they're exploring what it means to be human and what it means to be alive. And can we do that with code and with technology? So people talk about creative coding, and we're really interested in poets. Like, what does it mean to be a poet? And there's a whole culture in like America, MIT. We have this culture of demo or die. Who's heard of that term? Demo or die. Some people. So it's this idea of like that you have to make demos of your technology. But the word demo, really easy to turn it into the word poem. And just to quickly mention, I'll just explain like kind of how the school is structured. We are a sort of alternative school, and actually Ken and Rodrigo, who are here, went to the program, and so if you have questions, you can ask them. I can tell you from my experience, but you can hear about it from their experience. But one of the things that I really like is that we start the school, we ask people who apply to the school, we say, what do you want the school to be? And so actually, it's really nice. Like in the application, we ask them what they want, and we try to make the school reflect their dreams and their aspirations. And on the first day, we actually start like writing questions. questions. Like the first thing that we do is we just sit and we write questions. And we come up with this almost this collective list of questions. Like all of these questions that we have, and the school is really built on questions. And then we spend a lot of time, trying to answer them, but maybe even leave with more questions. And it's a lot of like super fun and weird. We have a lot of our heroes, like people like Brian House or Christine Sun Kim or Sarah Hendrick come and work with us, and we have experts come in and jam with the students. We do a lot of building by hand. So most people think about learning code. You think about you're sitting in front of a computer, but we try to actually build computers. Like what does it mean to be building with wires or thinking about things using objects. We spend a lot of time, a lot of time drawing and doing stuff like this. If we're talking about image processing, we're trying to figure out what it means to be a pixel, pixels, their relationships with their neighbors. We do code, we do theory, we do electronics. Probably one of my favorite images. We really like to create this kind of community, so we eat together. So we are cooking, eating bread, drinking wine. I like this idea. When I went to graduate school, I thought I had this romantic notion that school would involve a lot of wine and arguing, staying up late and arguing. We're trying to create this environment where people drink wine and argue. And it's just that's the kind of magical experience that we're trying to create. We're inspired by people like Margaret Hamilton. Margaret Hamilton was one of the programmers for the Apollo, and here she's printed out the source code. So we do a lot of work, Sarah Groff-Palermo, one of the students, printed out code. People print out code and write on it. Think about code as language. What does it mean to have this kind of not a computer screen, but code on the wall or code that we can hold in our hands. This is a great project by Simona de Rosa. She was looking, just to show you some examples of some of the things that participants in the school have made, she's looking at cooking, ingredients. When you're cooking food, you have ingredients that you can use. And these ingredients have compounds. So you can actually compute mathematically how close, how similar or dissimilar ingredients are. So she created this whole menu, a performance, it was a tasting menu of similar and dissimilar ingredients. And I love this is probably another one of my favorite images, because there's a bottle of wine, and then there's a whiteboard with some weird equation, and that's the kind of environment. This is Haruka Yamane created a programming language out of emoji. So here he's defining 2π with pizza slices. Turo Yorikawa created a card game. It's called a binary card game. So the cards are either in black and white, and then you make up the rules, and it's really very minimal and very fun. This is a project by Ishak Bertrand and Jonathan Wall, where there are two computers, two monitors, and two cameras, and they're looking at each other. And the camera from one set is looking at the screen of the other, and they're actually having a conversation. And the whole conversation happens graphically. And the code and the visuals are really beautiful because they're about language, what does it mean to communicate and have a conversation. And so you're watching these two systems talk to each other. This is Matt Daniels doing work trying to think about kind of this poetic way of drawing using geometry. Taking sketches and then turning them into these kind of beautiful graphics. This is our artist named Cristo Allegros taking stock prices and then drawing the stock price change using images of tulips. Or here, this is showing the Apple stock price change using Tim Cook's facial expression. So kind of a photographic-based stock visualization. This is a project called the Insecurity Camera by Andy Clymer, where it's a security camera where when you look at it, it looks away from you. So it's insecure. It's really cute, actually. It was so cute in the exhibit. And then it was really fun even before it was exhibited. It was super fun, even in this state. It was really hilarious to watch it. Yeah. Anyway, one of the nice things is that, so we've been running the school, and then people in the school have created their own schools. This is called OF Course in New York. Paul was one of our participants, created a school. There's a school in Berlin that Rachel Uaz, one of our students, created called School of Machines, Making, and Make-Believe, based out of Berlin. And then, there's all kinds of weird projects. I don't know what's going on here. Oleg put another eye on his face. Katie Smiley created this project, which is finding poems based on misconnections. So these are haiku poems. So it's reading misconnections, like on Craigslist and creating haiku poems. The thing to say is like we're super low budget with this kind of alternative school, and we don't spend our money on the signs. This is what it looks like on the front door. If you're in New York, we invite you to stop by and see what the School for Poetic Computation is about. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm super excited. Obrigado. Obrigado.
Hi, first of all, thank you for the wonderful presentation. How did you get the idea? Yeah. Because, seeing that you can put the car and do some designs, it's cool, but getting the fun out of it is amazing. So how do you actually get the final goal when you look at an experiment to do something creative?
Yeah, sometimes it's really, I said it before, like, for me the best projects I think are really driven by very simple questions. Like that first project that I showed you, which is like the line uncurling, that's a very simple what if question. What if a line uncurls? And so sometimes you find those questions really easily. Like if Nike came to us and then it was like, okay, what if you made a painting by running? And then sometimes you find that there's like a journey, where you go through multiple iterations. I think the key is to try to find this simple question. A lot of times for me, it's about, for me personally, it's driven by my background and that I love drawing, and I just want to make weird drawing tools. So anytime any company comes to me, I just am like, okay, let's make a drawing. Let's make a painting tool. So I am already thinking about that. But different people have different backgrounds. So for me, it's like a lot of that is that tension of my background and what I'm doing now, and it's not, they're not totally in sync. So I'm just trying to figure that out through the work. Any other questions? Any complaints?
When you're working with a company, do they? Is it difficult to get your ideas across sometimes, or just on the what's if? Because it's like a childish proposition, right?
Yeah, it really depends. Some companies are very forward-thinking, or you find the right person in a company, and everything goes really quickly. For me, the biggest challenge, because we do a lot of commercial work, and the biggest challenge is dealing with advertising agencies and having kind of intermediary between your idea and the outcome. So it's really refreshing to work in the arts where you're your idea, the outcome and your idea are really closely related. And the biggest challenge with advertising agencies is that for me, there just tends to be a lot of people. We'll get into Skype calls with an ad agency and we're 3 people in a room and there are 15 people in a big conference room, and it's I almost want to hire actors to come and have 15 people to sit with me so that we are we sort of even. And that's a challenge because when there's a lot of people in the room, then ideas get diluted and it's just hard. You really have to fight. And one of the things that I've found working commercially is that it's really good to know when to walk away, or be like really clear, like have very clear, intention for like what your limits are, because it's a challenge. I definitely like working more directly with companies than working with agencies, and then my favorite is public art commission or just making art, so I do a mixture and try to make it. Other questions?
When you get involved with the item,
Yeah.
it was because of the social aspect of it, or do you always try to make some money out of it?
That was really like the social aspect. Like we were just friends, and we were invited to go collaborate, and we just like it was a really exciting, and I think we were like in the right place at the right time. Sometimes I do projects because I need to pay for the studio or pay for my rent, or and I try to do as little of that as I can. It's like kind of for me at least personally, I try to have like a Robin Hood approach, which is like 1 or 2 big commercial projects a year, and then spend the rest of the time making art and having fun and doing stuff like this, like coming to Portugal and like participating in this conference, which for me that's the stuff I love. So I try to find the right balance.
That project was one of the people that were working with you get involved so quickly and so naturally that the outcome was.
Yeah, and we all knew each other. Like Theo, Chris, Evan were my students. We knew each other from school, right? We from the university. And James I knew from New York. We all knew each other. So when it's like, I almost feel like, as a kid we had this cartoon called Voltron, where you see like the different elements like come together and like make this giant robot. Like everything just like forms, and we felt like that. Like we had no idea about eye tracking or any of this stuff, and we just kind of came, like we flew in, like set up a lab and like buy random stuff and take it apart. And it doesn't work all the time, but we really like, there's such a good energy of like try as hard as we can to make it work.
Most of the works we have presented are a result of a collaboration with someone else.
Yeah.
Can you comment on the importance of the teamwork and how different backgrounds from the different people and different personalities may influence the final results?
Yeah. For me, it's really like, I can't stand working alone. Like if I have to work alone, I'll probably watch movies and play video games and, like eat pizza or something. Like I'm like I don't really get work done when I'm working alone. And the intention of collaboration, a lot of times for me, is to try to figure out what I can bring to the table and what somebody else can bring to the table, and what the kind of Venn diagram of similarities and dissimilarities are. And sometimes it's collaborating with somebody that is in the same field as I am. So when there's somebody like Olin, like we get along because we're coding and we can talk about code and share. It's very organic. But for example, right now I'm collaborating with an artist named Chantal Martin, who she's an illustrator, she's a fine artist. She makes drawings, and I'm thinking about kind of computational approaches to drawing. She just loves to draw, and we're just like jamming and trying different ideas out. And for me, there's something really magical about where's the world that both of us would want to live in, where the world that I would want to live in, where I feel like there's a generative aspect, where like I understand this, computational system and this world that she wants to live in. Like what's our shared world? And for me, that's an interesting idea, like trying to find this space, this comfortable space for multiple people to live in.
What motivated that collaboration?
Sorry?
What motivated that particular collaboration?
Oh, that was actually we knew each other for a long time, and then for this project called Clouds, which is actually on exhibit In the, I don't know where it's on the exhibit.
In the Considerate Terminal.
Okay. And Clouds is this interactive documentary, and part of the project involved commissioning artists, like really micro grants, like small grants for artists to make visuals for this documentary. So we got a chance to work together for that, and then we've just been jamming on some stuff for like non-commercial. There's an event coming up in October, which is called the Grace Hopper Convention, which is about women in computing. Grace Hopper is a famous computer programmer from she was in the Navy, and it's like a really amazing conference about women in computing, and so we're trying to do something for that conference. So it's like the collaboration started because of a micro grant, and then now we're jamming. And, you know.
So do you have a process, or it depends on the project and the people that you are working with?
Yeah, I wish I had more of a process. In general, you try to do a lot of research, taking a lot of research into the process. So you have a lot of period of time of like really sketching and finding references and finding ideas. And then usually it seems like the process is like R&D, a little bit of like artistic, like look and feel work, and then engineering work, and then look and feel work, and then I tend to alternate back and forth between like, I'm an artist, I'm a scientist, I'm an artist, I'm a scientist, and then by the end I'm like, I'm an art scientist, and it fits together. So I tend to go back and forth. So at first it's like research, like what could this possibly be? And then it's like, what does this actually look like? And then how does this actually work? And then how does it work and look like at the same time? How about a question from a female? No, but like, and I'm happy to talk about teaching or anything. But also, you can catch me, you know, after at any of these events. Yeah, but it's mostly guys that are asking questions. I want to give off.
So why do you think it's important to bring women to computation?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think we got terribly off track. So if you actually look at the history of computation, like original computer programmers were mostly women working with machines. Like we got really off track in the 80s. And there's a lot of studies of what happened and what went wrong. And just the levels of female participation in computer science degrees, in engineering roles, in STEM, you know, that I think there's like, for me it's like seems super off. And if we can create opportunities, like I love code, right? I love working with code and working with computation to create, you know, weird, eccentric stuff, and I would love for as many people as possible to be doing it. And to me, it just seems strange. I think like there's real problems. Like we have to work harder at making a very inclusive, safe place and warm, welcoming place, and also just really promote this message that there's like room at the table, right? Like this, like people should be at the table, and I think that's an important message to say. Like there's space at the table.
Sorry about that. About some of the tools that you have built in your experiments, you use them as open source tools and frameworks, right?
Yeah.
Do you do any kind of follow-up, or does the community actually grab them to maintain them for a long period of time, or?
Yeah, so we tend to like separate out like artwork and then this kind of functional reusable part. So in the openFrameworks community, we have this concept of an add-on. It's like additional code or some sort of reusable code. And that's like much more usable than like an artwork. Like if you have the source code for an artwork, like that's a lot of times it's not even like really great software. Like, my software is terrible. I just want to get, I'm not a software engineer. I just want to get it done. And so like I feel a lot of times my software is like really random. Like if you made an airplane out of like super random parts, and like all you want to do is fly the airplane and land it. But like you don't care what it looks like. But like if it takes off and lands, you're fine. So a lot of times it's trying to take this like weird systems that we made, but then make something that's like way more elegant and refined in terms of a reusable tool. So it might be like, I had to parse JSON data or XML for like this project, and so I can make this JSON parser that somebody else uses. And now a lot of communities are great at this. Like the JavaScript community is so great at making these like very small tools that are.
But no one is actually picking up the stuff that you do after you release them, or the community.
No, people are
picking them.
Yeah, people are picking them.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure. And
okay.
we try to like, create a community where things are made. It's hard. It's free software. It's like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was really impressed by the results from the school, and I don't know how much you can talk about the mechanics of the school, how it works, but I'm imagining that there's some kind of relationship between what you're saying when you collaborate, you try and find a kind of middle ground in the world. And were those works, I mean, when you're teaching, are you trying to immerse people in the kind of your world? Is it the poetic world? And are then those works a product of that teaching method, which I would say is more artistic and design orientated?
Yeah, I try to, I mean, our biggest thing about creating the school is actually just creating a space for people to come together and then see what happens. Like, I try to do approach. I taught in the university for 10 years, and then my approach when I taught in the university was like, I'm a gym instructor. And then I would come in and I would be like, we're doing image processing, like we're working with pixels, like creativity comes later, like here's homework. And a lot of what we do at the school is, we do some of that, but I think it's more driven by like very simple principles, like questions, like every question, like all questions are really important and valid, and questions lead to conversation, and conversation leads to learning. So there's less that, for me, the objective is to create a space where it's like really open for questions. And that I want participants to even leave with a set of questions. They come in with a set of questions, but even leave with a new set of questions that will like fuel creative process. So I don't know, my objective at the school is really to make a good space for that. But you can ask, we have some representatives who can ask them about their experience.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to be around tomorrow to the festival. Como está? Tudo bem? Olá, professora, está bom? Não tropeçar no fio.